Because introductions are for losers, and I'm a big fat loser, I'm just going to go ahead and skip that part and just kind of jump right into the video itself. If you didn't watch part 1 of this already, please go do that, or this isn't going to make a lick of sense. So the 4th song that is introduced in Arlo is called Better Life, and it's the first song that you get to see Ansel, Arlo's father, sing. And it's what you call an I am song, because it establishes the fact that, one, Ansel's a rich son of a gun. He repeats the fact that he has literally dollars everywhere, just kind of dripping off of him. And then you then get this transition into how he went from rags to riches, and then him suggesting that Arlo does the same. And he does that primarily in the chorus by saying you have to change yourself to make yourself, and that you need to unstrange yourself. And he repeats that over and over and over and again. And all the while he's obviously donning Arlo with new clothes and kind of wowing him with the money that he already has. But the great thing about this is that I think this is the most ironic piece of the entire movie, and here's why. One, it is very ironic to tell Arlo to get a better life, because Arlo's ideal life is simply being with his father, and he's quite literally there living it in that moment. And secondly, Ansel's kind of telling Arlo to go bugger off and get away from him. And Arlo is so caught up in the fact with the fact that he's literally there in the moment with his dad, he kind of loses touch with reality for a second of what's actually being said, and he just gets caught up in the riches of his dad, and he kind of mistakes it for fatherly love that isn't there. And in that moment, it wasn't even love that Ansel intended to be there. There's a little bit of foreshadowing in there about Ansel being a birdman, with references to a phoenix and standing on a perch while he's up on a chandelier all of a sudden. As for the music in there, you get a lot of piano and brass instruments, kind of like you would a stereotypical bourgeoisie New York apartment kind of boppy 20s vibe that Ansel was giving off, you know, as a businessman. And it's important, I think, to use piano in this particular song because it is a refined instrument. It's what people who have the time to practice a lot play. It's what smart people play. It's what the rich play. It's a refined instrument. So to use that as a way to narrate a rags to riches story is the most appropriate instrument that you can choose. The other great thing about it is that the piano is used in the next 2 songs, but for different reasons completely and totally, and I'll get to that. But it does establish a short-term musical element for the future because the setting stays relatively the same. The next song, although being very, very pithy, is probably one of the more impactful songs of the entire film. And it's a transition song dubbed the Collage of Broken Dreams, which is kind of a lot to unpack for a very short song. Why do I think it's the most impactful? Well, there's a multitude of reasons, actually. It's primarily because it blends Arlo's 2 numbers while he kind of sings and reiterates the advice that Ansel gave him in Better Life. So it begins with Arlo singing some of the lyrics in Better Life, but he tweaks it a little bit, making the line, "Unstrain yourself," a question while gazing at himself into a mirror, as though he's questioning his own, like, am I a strange person? What is there to fix? I've been told all my life that I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me per se. And then afterward you get his 2 other pieces blended in with it, notably More, and Beyond These Walls. His reflections begin to sing Beyond These Walls with also tweaked lyrics that I'll talk about at the end, which Arlo ends the song with. But what this does is that it creates this air of conflict in Arlo's mind. We know he's conflicted. We know that he feels confused, and we know that he's abandoned because, one, obviously, as I stated, he is alone. He didn't really plan ahead after, you know, going beyond those walls, of course, for potential rejection. So there's that confusion. He doesn't know what to do next in his journey. So he's kind of just deliberating, and he's thinking back on what he has done, hence all those memories of the prior songs blending in. He thought he was on the right path, but hasn't quite made it, or it didn't turn out the way he thought it would. And then lastly, the kind of finite defining element of the piece is the fact of him just kind of disrobing and getting into the water to get into the next piece. When he takes off the little suit and he exposes himself to the cold, brutal concrete jungle of New York City, he, in doing so, creates a level of symbolism. And that symbolism is supposed to communicate this idea of emotional vulnerability. As he is now becoming vulnerable to the environment around him, his emotions are now becoming vulnerable to the rejection that has just unfolded before him. He's trying to process everything that has just happened up into this point, and his only reaction as a result of all of it is to drown in his own melancholy. And when he realizes that he's going to drown in his own melancholy, he finally admits out loud that he is tired and aching, and that there is actually nothing behind the walls which he wanted so desperately to peer over. The great thing is that immediately afterward you get to see Arlo kind of vent, for lack of better words, about everything that's happened to him. The song Wash the Hurt Away is a realization song for Arlo. He's finally realized that he's been rejected and that he's feeling pain as a result of it. So he's now deciding to turn around and kind of direct this anger and confusion back at Ansel indirectly with this song. I say indirectly because it's not said to Ansel, but we see him accept his own vulnerability by referencing the fact that he has thin skin, he's let his armor down. He expresses his anger, the fact that his dad didn't accept him, that he was frustrated at the fact that his dad was denying him, although he was at his front door. He's angry that he's losing this relationship with his father. But what we get in this piece, because it is a very cathartic one, we get a lot of symbolism. And the majority of that symbolism comes from the use of water and the use of color. Now, water is used in a number of ways, but its primary element here is to portray the fact that Arlo is drowning in his emotions right now. He's completely and totally succumbed to this depression that he's at the very bottom of his emotional journey right now. But the color is used more to pinpoint more concrete emotions that he's experiencing. Notably, the fact that in his memories what we see is that we see a collage of those. And in the negative ones, the ones that he's forgetting, they're generally more either monochrome or they are single color representations of individuals. Like we see Ansel being portrayed as being almost completely blue, and then we see Arlo reaching out to him, and he's just almost completely green with the exception of his ginger hair. And then you see his happier memories with Esme in his house, and those have more detail, there's more color used in them, and they evaporate. He expresses anger at the fact that he doesn't have that anymore, and then he has the memories, the good memories with Ansel also evaporate in front of him as well. And he expresses his frustrations that that was a future that he was never going to get to have, that was all tossed away too. So as a result, he kind of just succumbs to this fatalism of sorts. The color red is used a whole lot, and I think that color kind of more or less represents his fear and anxiety. And I say that because you always see Ansel in the scenes in which there is red. You see Arlo getting the door slammed in his face, and then you see Ansel again with wings behind his back on a giant gray wave with a red background. You have his fear of being rejected by Ansel, and then his anxieties as a result of the build-up to it, and anxieties of an uncertain future to which he thinks he's just condemned to drift alone and sad, or even just give up and die. Now, the music part also is important. With the music bit, we get this incorporation of an organ and a choir instead of a piano. You get a shift into that. And with the piano and the organ, what we see is this symbolic death of his dreams and aspirations as a result of his rejection by Ansel. And then also we get this hip-hop element added into it in juxtaposition to the rest of the music. It's more evident in this song because, like I said earlier, he's kind of listing off all of his grievances like a teenager would to their parent if they feel like they've been wronged. So it only makes sense that because he knows exactly what's been wrong to him, he can just regurgitate it like that, really fast off the top of his head, and has an object. It's very candid with that object as being Ansel's reluctance to even consider him as a son. The last song that I can really unpack is Something's Missing. And this song is a decision song because Ansel is having to decide between his responsibilities as a father towards his son and essentially showing the entire world that, oh, I'm a hybrid birdman, or just sticking with his corporate real estate face and moving on with his life as though nothing actually ever happened in the past. The major element that I want to look at is the use of lighting. Lighting is probably employed here more so than any of the other works because of its juxtaposition between people. We see Arlo illuminated for the entirety of the piece, whereas you see Ansel kind of hiding in the shadows the majority of it. At the beginning, Arlo is highlighted with a pink light, and in theater, pink lights, according to my research, are used to show that he's acting as a comfort character. He's trying to bring a calming element towards the person he is singing to, and he's trying to ease Ansel's inhibitions about becoming a father, whereas Ansel just can't deal with that, so he's constantly running away from being illuminated. And we get this really near the end of the song where you literally have Arlo singing, "Hey, I'm here," and then you have Ansel singing that, "Nope, I can't hide anymore, but I'm going to try my darndest to." He's hiding from the truth in hiding in darkness, whereas you have Arlo out on the stage and in the crowd just telling the world how he feels. So it's a really brilliant juxtaposition that you can just highlight just by using lighting. Like the previous number, there's also a good use of drums. I didn't bring that up, but I should have. But they're both cathartic pieces. So I think the use of a drum kind of represents the respective heartbeats. One of them's an angry one, the other one is scared in that sense. And that something that they refer to in the entire song is familial unity, which has been the entire point of this film, is to achieve familial unity. And it ends with Ansel turning slightly towards the light and half of his face being illuminated, and then he's kind of slowly beginning to accept this fact of like, hey, I need to be a dad. A few nice little details about the music that I also wanted to talk about was the fact that when Ansel begins to sing in the song, you hear a music box, kind of like you would play in like a little baby's room. So that's there, and I think that's a nice little touch because it's kind of hinting at his fact that he needs to be a father. And then you get a little bit of that piano as well, and this element of pensivity, I guess, if that's even a word. But he's trying to deal with what he's going through, and because he's told how his life is played out with the piano, it makes sense to bring that instrument back when he's trying to figure things out about himself. So, in conclusion, Arlo uses a whole lot of stuff to tell its story. And I think the fact that it decides to use a whole lot of stuff and a lot of changing instruments and a lot of changing settings really helps feed into this idea of the found family, which is the main element of the story itself, is that the world around you can change, and the vehicles of life and the problems that come your way are going to be different. But ultimately, as long as the same people who are around you continue to care about you, they are still your family, and you can treat them and interact with them as such in a platonically loving manner, if I want to be clinical about it.